Oh, yeah, and we've had a number of conversations between governors. You can imagine that for the last, what are we at, 15 days now, 16 days, there's been active conversation between governors precisely about safeguarding democracy. We've seen attacks on the Constitution and a desire by the president to take away birthright citizenship. Donald Trump has put so many things under attack, and we as governors are attempting to figure out how we can preserve rights for people in our state, and we share those ideas, different from one state to another, I might add, just because different states have different laws on the books to protect people. We actually have done a good job in the state of Illinois of protecting people's rights. Other states have looked to copy some of the things that we're doing, and we get good ideas from them.
Is there something coming up with?
No, we don't do public. It's not like it's an organization that has public meetings, and it's an opportunity for us to bring experts in, attorneys often, but also people who are expert in fields like technology. We've seen an attack on our individual privacy rights. In just the last few days, Donald Trump has allowed President Musk to take control of people's personal data, and that's of great concern to all of us. So we've talked one another with what can we do in the state level, working with our attorneys general, for example. By the way, there are a couple of the governors who are former attorneys general, and so they also are helpful and have come from another organization, of attorneys general, who also meet separately, and they talk specifically about the lawsuits that are already filed and the ones that are likely to be filed.
Attorney General Raul
Jeremy.
and other attorneys general today, they announced a settlement with the National Women's Soccer League after a number of players came forward with allegations of harassment and sexual misconduct. There were players across this league, including with the Chicago Red Stars, who went public with allegations of misconduct and abuse at the hands of coaches and officials going back 10 years. There was an investigation later that found emotional abuse and sexual coercion were systemic across the league. Under this settlement, Raul and the other attorneys general will be able to enforce these new league protocols and protections for these players. And there'll also be a $5 million fund to compensate players who were abused. Any reaction, any thoughts to all this?
I did not know that, so thank you for reporting on that. I will just say that these women deserve all the protections in the world that we can provide. You never know if a settlement was really enough until we see what the results are in the years going forward. I will say that many of the owners of those teams have stepped forward and are doing good work, including, as you know, Laura Ricketts, to try to protect the players and stand on their side in this moment. So I'm glad to hear that something has been, an agreement has been reached. But again, we won't know what the real results are for some time. Dave.
Thank you very much. The priority is intact families, keeping kids with their loved ones, but in some families, as you know, dad's not a hero, he's a zero. He's an alcoholic, he shouldn't be around kids, he abuses them. How do you account for maybe the intact family is not the best place for some kids?
Well, I would like to ask Director Miller to come up and talk about it, but I will say that DCFS tries to be extraordinarily careful about, as they return a child to a family, to keep a family intact, that they've dealt with issues like alcoholism or drug abuse that may have occurred in a family that has caused a child to be removed. And so I want to commend them. It's very hard work. We have tens of thousands of kids to look after, to monitor, and so on. And the people who are on the front lines do, I think, an outstanding job, honestly. And as we have funded them better and we've better filled the positions that are available at DCFS, I think where are you, Heidi? I think we actually have more people working at DCFS now than, well, I don't know, in the last 20 years. Thank you. So, I mean, we've done a good job of filling the head count that is required, and there may even be more necessary. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I'll just say what Governor Pritzker said really eloquently is true. Every case is different. And it is our responsibility at the department to be very thoughtful and mindful and careful about The decisions we're making, because the decision we make with regards to a child and a family impacts that child and that family forever. Families struggle sometimes, and a temporary struggle can be overcome. And my family is a great example of that. Today, what we're talking about is, when families struggle, even if families have to be removed from their biological parents, there are loving family members, extended family members, caregivers that can step in and fill that role, and kids do better when we find those folks and support them.
This is a monumental step
Mike.
for the agency and the state as a whole. This is a question for the director and the governor. What would you like to see lawmakers do this coming spring to, enact change for the state agency, but also in many ways lift up the youth in care? Maybe kids that have left the DCFS system, they're trying to find their way. Are there any plans in the works?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that one of our core priorities for the next several years is really supporting our kids in care as they transition into adulthood. It's an area that, frankly, we've looked at and we've recognized that there has been a gap in the support we provide over time. So, some of the things that we're looking for are, frankly, support from the legislature to fund some of the initiatives that we want to put forward, things that really expand services and supports for kids to help them make sure they have stable housing. We want to make sure that we're looking at the transition plan early on as kids are starting to emerge into adulthood, so we know exactly where they're going. And of course, the best thing for kids is if we can help find them a permanent, stable, loving home before they age out of care. Aging out of care is what happens when we kind of have failed at the part that we really want to achieve. So we want to make sure we take care of those kids because we owe it to them, but we want to kind of put everything we have into helping kids find homes like Jeanette's home, so they can be safe and be with loved ones and grow and thrive in a family.
Governor,
Yes.
yesterday President Trump had a press conference at which he decided to take over Gaza and basically send the Palestinians to another country. Could we have your reaction to that?
He says so many things that are so far out of bounds. This one, let me just be clear, is dangerous for the Middle East. It's dangerous for Israel. It's dangerous for Palestinians, and it's dangerous for the United States, because the people across the Middle East care deeply about what happens to Palestinians and to Gaza. And to propose something or throw it out there, it's hard to tell when he's doing something, just off the top of his head that he doesn't really mean, trying to distract often, perhaps, from what Elon Musk is doing at some of the agencies yesterday, or if he's actually proposing something that's real. And the President of the United States should be more responsible than that. This one does not seem to have a responsible bone in his body.
Governor, you mentioned President Musk. Reverend John Cavallo yesterday said that Illinois needs its own version of a Department of Government Efficiency. Do you agree with him? And as you put your budget together, can you provide us maybe a few examples of scenarios you're looking to cut to fill this gap, this gap?
Well, the problem, let's be clear, I'm very much in favor of efficiency in government, and we've been steadily over the last 6 years finding ways in which we can operate government, again, more efficiently, at a lower cost per person that we're serving, if that's possible. Obviously, with inflation, sometimes that's not possible. But these folks who, at this, what's called, I'm putting quotes around it because it's not a real Department of Government, to be clear, the Department of Government Efficiency, and what the representative is cheering for. They are all about shutting down services for middle class, working class, and the most vulnerable families in the country. They are about cutting government. Why? So that Donald Trump can bring an enormous tax cut to the wealthiest people in the country. That's also what the tariffs are about. So I don't, it is for a state representative to talk about that Department of Government efficiency as if it's something we need in the state of Illinois. We need efficiency for sure, and we're always working to do that. But as all of you know, there is not a line in the budget that says waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah, let's cut that. You know, this is, you have to, in the details of every agency, you look for places where you can do it better and less costly. And sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not, but we're always looking for that. Why? Because we'd rather deploy those dollars for better use. So I reject the notion that we want something like what Elon Musk is doing at the federal government level in the state of Illinois. Cool.
I'm sorry, we're just kind of waiting now for an executive order that would call for the
Dismantling the Department of Education, yeah.
to be eliminated. What effect would something like that have on Illinois schools, and what do the books look like after that would happen?
Getting rid of the Department of Education at the federal level would be devastating for schools across the state of Illinois. Let me just talk about the funding, and then we can talk about the individual programs. But as you probably know, about 88 to 90% of funding for schools in Illinois, K-12 schools, comes from local property taxes, local government, in other words, school boards, or the state. Collectively, that's about 88 to 90%. The rest of it, which is not an insubstantial number, we're talking about billions of dollars, comes from the federal government. And the federal government, if it shuts down the Department of Education and gets rid of those programs, will have diminished education in all the states, but especially here in the state of Illinois. Special education, which we all know kids who've gone through special education, or we know teachers in special education who are some of the most overworked, underpaid, people in the teaching profession, and we need more of them. To get rid of special education is to harm, again, the most vulnerable children in our state. So the Department of Education needs to be preserved, the programs need to be preserved. Again, always looking for efficiencies. If there's a way to deliver those services less costly, in a less costly fashion, fine. But taking away 10 or 12% of the education budgets of the 50 states is a disaster.
Last one.
John.
Speaking of doing it better, I was looking at some figures, and the Department of Corrections is 400 security staff members short of what's budgeted, 2,300 short of what they consider fully staffed. This is a problem nationwide. Corrections are way understaffed. There seems to be a groundswell. Some think tanks, some progressives, some organizations are talking about we're not going to hire our way out of this problem. The answer is decarceration. Do you have any thoughts about? And this is a time when the prison population here has dropped 10,000 in the last 5 years, and yet we still have problem hiring people. Is there an answer to that? Do we have to look at the way we sentence people, or put them away for long periods?
Sure. Let me just begin, though, by saying that that we've been doing a better job, and the Department of Corrections is doing a better job at hiring. Again, it's about adjusting to the situation of the economy. As you know, there was a massive labor shortage across the country for a couple of years, and we're only now starting to recover from that labor shortage. What happens in a labor shortage, of course, is the cost of hiring somebody goes way up. Government doesn't adjust to that very well. We only do budgets once a year. In a company, they can adjust day by day. And so we compete with the private sector and with others for somebody who might work in corrections. But we're doing a better job of being competitive and hiring people, so that's improving. Look, we also have looked at the people who have committed nonviolent crimes and whether or not they should be incarcerated from the get-go, or how long they should be incarcerated for. I can tell you one thing, and I know Heidi Miller knows this, having been at the Department of Juvenile Justice, that any time that you send somebody in for the first time into a prison to serve a sentence, you are diminishing the likelihood that they will become rehabilitated and increasing the likelihood that they'll be a recidivist. It's just a fact. So having said that, there are people who need to be locked up. And We do that in the state of Illinois when we need to. But yes, as you know, we're trying hard to make sure that we're doing it efficiently and not incarcerating people who shouldn't be.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.